a much talked about brotherhood. They were born as princes, but with very different destinies.
William is in a far different position than Harry. William will be king. Harry will never be king.
Their growth has not been easy.
They had had a pretty horrible time. You know, how does any 15-year-old and 12-year-old cope with that?
They both experienced the loss of their mother, Princess Diana.
They couldn't share with anyone else what they had experienced.
They were once so close. The rift between the two princes cannot be ignored. So similar, yet so different.
Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace throughout the evening. Then at 10:25, their patience was rewarded with the formal notice of the birth. It was signed by Mr. George Pinker, the Queen's gynecologist, and other doctors who attended the princess. The crowd cheered to the echo.
The fact that Diana produced a little boy, an heir, I think just further endeared her to the British public. People loved her even more, and when she came out holding Prince William with Prince Charles, images that really just melted, I think, even the most hardened hearts around the country. And it was a cause for great celebration. Britain had come through a difficult time, and I think the royal family were giving the country something to look forward to.
William had a fairly traditional aristocratic childhood, in as much as he was taken care of by nannies. His parents were, you know, Diana particularly was a modern parent, but she was a modern aristocratic parent, and she did use nannies, and the nannies really were the people that William spent most of his time with.
Prince William Arthur Philip Louis was born on the 21st of June, 1982. 2 years later, his brother, Prince Henry Charles Albert David, was born, Prince Harry.
I've known those two boys, William and Harry, since they were born. I used to change their nappies. They used to call me Uncle Paul. I've always been there, and I've watched them grow. I'm very proud of them. They're lovely boys.
Being a new mother, there were obviously challenges for Diana, but being a new mother and being a member of the royal family and trying to juggle everything within the confines of Kensington Palace, I think really did take their toll. Now, Diana did make the decision to hire a nanny for Prince William, but she was always paranoid, I think, as both of her children were growing up.
I think William in particular suffered growing up because Diana was very possessive and very. She'd lost her own mother when she was 6, and she had felt abandoned and unloved, and as a result, she grew up with a great fear of being unloved and being abandoned again. And when she realized that the nanny that she'd employed, a woman called Barbara Barnes, who was very informal and loving and hands-on, when Diana realized that the bond between Nanny and William was very strong, she took fright and found a flimsy excuse to get rid of Barbara Barnes. And so when William was 4 years old, suddenly this woman who had been in his life for as long as he could remember, whose bed he'd climbed into every morning for a cuddle before getting up, was gone. And I think that was a major turning point in William's life, because he had been a very outgoing little boy. William became rather introverted, and nobody explained to him what had happened, and he never saw Barbara again. William felt abandoned when the nanny left.
Diana did not want her sons to have a traditionally distant royal upbringing. She wanted to be at the forefront of their lives.
She loved to have fun. She loved to giggle. She loved to play practical jokes. And she loved nothing more than cuddling up with her two boys, watching TV and watching game shows and soap operas. And the boys were the center of her world.
To anyone in the know, it was very obvious that the Wales's marriage was in real trouble by the late 80s. Inevitably, the announcement was made by the then Prime Minister, John Major, that Diana and Charles were going to separate. And she made sure that the first people who found out that they were going to separate were William and Harry, and she actually made the drive to Ludgrove School herself to go and tell them. And Harry took it very badly, of course, being younger than William. He was incredibly upset. William was very stoic and said to his mother, well, if you're happier, if you're going to be happier, Mummy, then this is the right thing to do. Diana took it upon herself to give an interview to Martin Bashir, who was the presenter of Panorama. Completely unprecedented, a total shock to the royal family.
Diana did this interview in great secrecy, but alerted William and his housemaster to the fact that it would happen a couple of days in advance. And the housemaster said, will you please come down to Eton and explain to William what is about to happen. And so she went down to Eton, and she had the briefest of conversations. I think she was there for about 5 minutes, and said, don't worry, there's nothing sensational in it. You won't be upset. You know, you'll like it. And of course, she was completely wrong. William was really upset by that interview.
And of course, caught in this very ugly crossfire were two little boys, William, who was at Eton at the time, who had to deal with the taunts and the other children having seen this interview, mocking his mother and her doe eyes as she was talking to Martin Bashir. Very, very difficult for both of them. Harry was more sheltered. He was still at Ludgrove at the time. And I remember the headmaster there making sure that newspapers were banned. They were out the way. No one could watch that interview. It was his way of protecting Harry. I think at Eton it was much harder to do that. William was exposed to everything, and he called his mother in a fury and a rage. I remember speaking to Simone Simmons, who was one of Diana's closest friends, who recalled that it was actually the rare and only time, I believe, when William turned on his mother and said he would never forgive her for what she'd done.
On the 31st of August, 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales, was killed in a car accident. The driver of the car, Henri Paul, lost control at high speed and struck the 13th column of the L'Alma Tunnel in Paris.
He had been in the south of France before her death with his mother and with Dodi Fayed and Mohammed Al Fayed, and they had stayed in the Al Fayed's villa in the south of France, and they'd been on the boat that Diana had been famously photographed on. They had had a pretty horrible time. William had had a row with Diana. Harry had had a row with one of Fayed's children. They had hated the publicity. They'd hated the fact that the paparazzi were all over them. They hadn't really liked the Fayeds very much. They'd felt hugely uncomfortable. And so they were quite relieved, I think, to get back to spend the next part of their school holidays in Scotland with their father. They flew back to England, they went up to Balmoral, and they'd been there for some weeks, having the most wonderful time with all the royal family, the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, aunts, uncles, cousins, and their father. And their mother was due to come back the next day, and they were due to fly from Balmoral down to London to see her for the last few days of the school holidays before going back to school. And they had a phone conversation with Diana on that evening before she flew back. She'd wanted to speak to both of them, and they were playing a game, and they were actually quite irritated at having to leave the fun they were having and go and speak to their mother on the phone. And so they tried to get her off the phone quite, as quickly as they reasonably could and get back to their game. And of course, that was the last time they spoke to her. That was the last time they heard her voice.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has been seriously injured in a car accident in Paris. Her companion, the Harrods heir Dodi Al Fayed, has been killed. The driver of the princess's car is also understood to be dead. The accident happened at just after midnight in the west of the city near the Alma Bridge.
She died in the early hours of the next morning. And how does any 15-year-old and 12-year-old cope with that? It was devastating for them, obviously.
First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her two boys. This week at Balmoral, we have all been trying to help William and Harry come to terms with the devastating loss that they and the rest of us have suffered.
I remember the day William and Harry came back to Kensington Palace after their mother died. I remember standing in the hallway and William walked in and shook my hand and asked me if I was all right. I said, I'm fine, thank you. Harry ran down the corridor, flung his arms around me and broke his heart. I still remember his tears wet my shirt through. He was broken-hearted.
Hearts broke around the world. People watched that funeral all over the globe when they saw the coffin passing and that little envelope on the top with a wreath of flowers with the word mummy, which had been handwritten by Harry.
William and Harry walked behind the cortege. It was a long walk. There were crowds sobbing and wailing, and thousands and thousands of people lining the route. And they walked with their father, their grandfather, and Charles Spencer. They did rely on one another. They were very close. The two are very different characters, but they complement one another very well. And they've always had a great banter. They tease each other mercilessly. And then when their mother died,
thank you so much.
I think that brought them even closer together, because they couldn't share with anyone else what they had experienced. It wasn't, like the death of any normal parent, because with the death of a normal parent, you don't have the world grieving as well. It was almost as though their grief was being devalued by the grief of strangers. So I think it was a very difficult time for them, and during that sort of the years after Diana's death, there was a bond which was closer, arguably, than most siblings.
William, although he looks like his mother, is more like his father. He's studious, he's very careful, he's very respectful, he's duty-bound. Harry, on the other hand, is a hybrid of the Spencers' red hair and the Windsors, but he has his mother's naughty streak.
Harry was the sort of the frontline jester that will be the guy that be entertaining. And also, if you ever got in a spot of bother, you know, if Harry were old enough, he's the sort of guy that would come and help you out. William would think about it.
Harry was always the soldier, William was always the general. So when my two boys visited and they played war games, William had an army that he could direct. But Harry's happy to muck in.
I think when it comes to Prince Harry, it's obvious that there's huge affection between the two brothers. Even when he was very little, when he was 10, 11 years old, and he'd see the girls starting to scream because Prince William was coming along because he was that bit older and they could see he was very handsome. We're told Prince Harry would encourage the girls to scream and just because he knew it really embarrassed his brother. So he seems to be the more playful one, Prince Harry. And again, that would bear out what the Princess of Wales said in that Panorama interview about he's a more more of a Spencer wild child than William is. And we can see it, can't we, in the pictures we see in his antics and the kind of things he likes to do. But I also get the impression from the times we've seen the two together talking to one another and about one another and about that, because they've spoken about their closeness as brothers, that you get the feeling that Prince William, for all his understanding of the seriousness of his role in the future, he makes it very clear that he needs his brother and he values that.
Harry is a party creature. He always will be. So obviously he's going to get caught out.
Today's papers all carry headlines about his drug-taking and underage drinking sessions. The paper which broke the story says the young prince smoked the drug on several occasions at private parties with friends.
Yeah, in January 2005, I ran a story about Prince Harry, a picture that we got of Prince Harry going to a party, actually with William, and he was wearing a Nazi outfit. It created a huge stink. William's reaction to the Nazi story, when he had a chance to bend my ear about it, was very sweet, and it was a sort of the way I'd like my big brother to stick up for me if I'd been put in the papers and obviously something I'd done had upset people. So, yeah, I mean, there is something very special with William and Harry, that they are extremely close. And anything bad for Harry, William will stick up for him to the nth degree. Harry learnt a lot in that small period of time, and I don't think at that stage in his life anybody could have said anything to him that he would have taken notice of, but luckily he's grown up since then.
There's a long tradition of senior members of the royal family going into the armed forces, because after all, the monarch is head of the armed forces. And it's a useful place, really, for them to be.
Harry's service in the military wasn't just a sort of box-ticking exercise. Harry was a genuine believer in the military and always wanted to be a soldier from, I guess, from the age when he was able to know what a soldier was. So
Prince Harry's military experience was fraught with security concerns. He joined Sandhurst in 2005, and in 2006, the Ministry of Defense announced that he would be deployed to Iraq the following year. This led to a fierce public debate.
Harry had been stopped from going. His original deployment, he was going right up to the front line, and the press worked out where he was going to be sent. Then, of course, that meant that the Taliban knew where he was going to be sent as well, which meant that if he did go, it would be putting not just him in danger, but also his men in danger. And so Harry was pulled from that deployment.
I have decided today that Prince Harry will not deploy as a troop leader with his squadron. I've come to this final decision following a further...
Because of the way that the regiments rotated in their deployments, it was quite clear that William was not actually going to make it to Afghanistan. He wouldn't, his regiment wouldn't go there for 18 months. And rather than sit around kicking his heels, doing training work in this country, he decided to go and look at the other forces.
After Harry's deployment was cancelled, William went on to train in the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force. In October 2008, it was announced that Harry would follow his brother, learning to fly military helicopters at RAF Shawbury.
To me, I didn't join the forces to be, like I said a lot of times before, mollycoddled or treated any different. And as far as I'm concerned, in my eyes, if Harry can do it, then I can do it. I don't really separate us in that much difference. And I think as future head of the armed forces, it's really important that I at least get the opportunity to be credible and to do the job that I signed up for and to do the best I can. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And the search and rescue role is now, you know, slightly different, so obviously being able to go to Afghanistan, but it's still doing an important job, and I hope that it's a step in the right direction exactly for the future.
I think the struggle that I was talking about was mainly the exams and stuff like that. I mean, when you sort of the helicopter course, you start with something like 4 or 5 weeks of ground school and exams. Exams never been my favourite, and I always knew that I was going to find it harder than most people. But I'm through that now, and finally got hands-on to a job that I absolutely adore. It is still hard work, but I'm better than William, so it's fine.
Yeah, just add that.
You've been helping him with the exam?
Yeah, an awful lot. He needs a lot of help. It's it's the RAF way, so you have to help the army out quite a lot.
Does it come down to sort of mental maths tests, or?
Yeah, a bit of that. You know, a few trick questions, try and catch him out.
I think the time when that bond started to fracture a bit was when Harry probably came out of the army and started going into royal work.
And I think he accepted that. He knew that, and he knew that, you know, to being able to perform 2 tours of duty was perhaps more than he even anticipated. And then that sort of effectively landed him in an office job in the Ministry of Defence, which would not have been to his liking. And so that was the end of his military career. And I think at that point, you know, he acknowledged, like his brother, that he was cut out for royal duties.
The space was quite small within their charitable world for the 2 brothers together. And I think Harry slightly railed at the hierarchy. Here was his brother, you know, his mate, but who was slightly pulling rank at times.
And, you know, it was part of this new machinery, this new royal machinery of modernising the royal family. And, you know, I think there were great hopes for Harry, to be honest. And, you know, he was certainly probably the most popular member of the royal family at that particular time.
I suspect that when William married Kate, I mean, Harry adored Kate and Kate adored Harry, but I suspect that, as with every family, when one sibling marries, their focus turns slightly onto their new wife.
And so everything looked good and remained so until, you know, his marriage, and there was all the sort of, there was a lot of, I would say, controversy, but, you know, for the first time here you had a prince of the realm marrying an American divorcee of mixed heritage. But actually, I think the general feeling of that was very positive. I mean, I was at Windsor commentating for a US network about it. Personally, I thought it was an amazing step forward for the royal family. You know, 20, 30 years ago, this probably wouldn't have happened.
Harry and Meghan's relationship doesn't seem well supported, especially by his older brother.
William looked at Harry's relationship with Meghan that was going at a fearsome pace, moving at a fearsome pace, and uttered a word of warning. Said, look, you know, are you sure? Are you sure about this? You are going very, very, you know, you're moving fast. It was, I think, the most legitimate remark for William to make as his older brother. You know, their parents' marriage had disintegrated. very largely because the two didn't know one another when they got married. They'd moved too quickly, for altogether different reasons, but they had moved too quickly. So William was just adding a voice of caution. And Harry, I think, took it very badly. There were other friends of Harry's, old friends, who said much the same thing. Again, Harry took it very badly.
But now that it is all official, Prince Harry, do you have that sense that the combination of the two of you, your different backgrounds, that you together represent something new for the royal family?
I don't know if it's something new. I think it's, you know, for me, it's an added member of the family. It's another team player as part of the bigger team. And you know, for all of us, all we want to do is be able to carry out the right engagements, carry out our work, and try and encourage others and the younger generation to be able to see the world in the correct sense, rather than perhaps having a distorted view. So you know, the fact that I fell in love with Meghan so incredibly quickly was sort of confirmation to me that everything, all the stars were aligned, everything was just perfect. It was this beautiful woman just sort of literally tripped and fell into my life. I fell into her life. And the fact that I know the fact that she'll be really unbelievably good at the job part of it as well, is obviously a huge relief to me, because she'll be able to deal with everything else that comes with it. But no, you know, we're a fantastic team. We know we are, and we hope to, you know, over time, try and have as much impact for all the things that we care about as much as possible.
I am very excited about that, yeah.
I think then, as time went by and Meghan moved into Kensington Palace and became a member of the family, and there was unhappiness within the office. There were rumours that Meghan was bullying some of the staff. Her method of working was not what they had been used to. Whether it was because she was American, whether it was because she was a movie star who treated people in a different way, it was not what had happened in the past within that royal household. And I think William, when he heard that some members of staff were being reduced to tears or not enjoying their working life anymore, I think he got very angry. And he confronted Harry and told him what was going on, and Harry was protective of Meghan. So that is where I think the seeds of it all, a fracture in this bond that had been so close, came from.
Meghan and Harry welcomed the newest royal member a few weeks before their first anniversary. His name was announced 2 days later: Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor.
Meghan and Harry have been doing things their own way. They have made a statement, a clear statement, that this baby belongs to them, not the public. In my understanding, this is somewhat unprecedented when there's this much interest and when the royals are determined to keep it to themselves.
Behind the tall walls of Windsor Castle is where fewer than 25 guests were invited to witness the newest royal baptism. Those invited taken discreetly to the tiny private chapel. Outside, though, the streets were thronging with people. Those hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal christening, though, were left disappointed.
We do pay for the royal family, including Meghan and Harry, and I think that they could have given us a little, you know, a little something.
I think it should be public, you know, it always has been. Why change it?
It's their decision, it's their family. It's not as if they're direct in line.
And this royal watcher says the public may have to get used to this royal couple's desire for privacy.
Well, it seems to be the case that Harry has decided he wants his little boy to have more of a private life. He feels he's a long way from the throne and wants to enjoy some type of privacy. But it could be a problem, because no matter what you do, he is growing up in a royal goldfish bowl. He has got two of the most famous parents in the world.
Today's christening is a very different royal event, part of the continuing desire by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to raise their son Archie out of the spotlight. And they're a couple determined to do things their own way.
Yes, I'm very excited to announce that Meghan and myself had a baby boy early this morning, a very healthy boy. Mother and baby are doing incredibly well. It's been the most amazing experience I could ever possibly imagine. How any woman does what they do is beyond comprehension, but we're both absolutely thrilled. And so grateful to all the love and support for everybody out there, from everybody out there. It's been amazing. So we just wanted to share this with everybody.
There has been a fundamental disconnect on the part of Meghan and Harry in the difference between being a celebrity and being a royal. As a celebrity, you're entitled to privacy when it comes to things like this. I mean, of course, you have Beyonce with reporters camped out at the hospital, but as a celebrity, you don't owe the public anything when it comes to pictures of your newborn. As a royal, the expectation is that you do. As a royal, the expectation is that this family, in a way, belongs to the public. They're public servants. And if the people want to see a picture of the baby, you give them a picture of the baby. If the people want to see the new mom just hours after she gives birth, trotted out in stockings and high heels, then you do it. That has been done up until now. Whether or not that's right, that is the precedent. So for Harry and Meghan to treat this the way a celebrity would really treat this, which is, we ask for privacy at this time, that's not what royals do. Harry and William had very different experiences as new fathers. Harry's was a lot more private. But having said that, you know, of course you have to remember, William is in a far different position than Harry. William will be king. Harry will never be king. So I think the standards are not the same. The expectation isn't as high. And Harry and Meghan hopefully will be allowed more privacy.
Doing things their own way sounds like a destabilizing factor for the very traditional royal family. And behind this destabilization, there were unspoken conflicts, especially with his older brother, Prince William.
There's been a lot of talk in the press about rifts with your brother. How much of that is true?
Part of this role and part of this job and this family being under the pressure that it's under, inevitably, you know, stuff happens. But look, we're brothers. We'll always be brothers. We're certainly on different paths at the moment, but I will always be there for him, and as I know, he'll always be there for me. You know, we don't see each other as much as we used to because we're so busy. But you know, I love him dearly, and you know, the majority of the stuff is the majority of stuff is created out of nothing. But you know, it's just, as I said, as brothers, you know, you have good days, you have bad days.
Harry and Meghan left as working members of the family, left the country, went to Canada first, then America.
Look, they're clearly very unhappy with the royal existence that they have at the moment and the way that their public life impinges on them. It's something they clearly want to change, and many people have sympathy with that. It's understandable. The crux of the matter is you can't be half royal. You can be part of the royal machine, you can accept the privileges that go with it, but also take the restrictions. You live in a sort of bubble, or you can stand back. I mean, the next generation of Dukes of Kent, Dukes of Gloucester, they're private citizens. No one would recognise them in the street. You can go down that route if you want. What you can't do is to be sort of transatlantic royals who drop in, do a bit of royal stuff, but then go off to do this sort of financial independence stuff in LA or Toronto, wherever it is.
I think the whole plan that Harry and Meghan have is a really problematic one because they're talking about stepping back. Their critics would argue, about having their cake and eat it. They're talking about one day representing the Queen on a foreign tour to another country, on another day, say in North America, earning serious money with some sort of endorsement of some sort of product. The risk is that those two things aren't compatible. The risk is that their pursuit of money will tarnish the Windsor brand and tarnish the House of Windsor.
In September 2020, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix. The concern that Harry and Meghan would expose the entirety of the royal family's life to the public arose.
There may be a point that at some stage that the Queen, Charles and William believe that what Meghan and Harry are proposing is a threat to the institution of the British monarchy, then they will act.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have undertaken a public relations blitz, recently appearing in a buzzy prime-time interview with Oprah Winfrey that drew millions of viewers. In the interview, the couple discussed mental health issues, and the Duchess said she had suicidal thoughts after marrying into the British royal family.
I think there is now an allegation of racism hanging over a member or members of the royal family. We don't know who, as we said earlier, not the Queen, not the Duke of Edinburgh, but beyond that, we don't know who. Harry and Meghan wouldn't say. And nor do we know the context in which this remark was made. But we do know, from what we've heard, that both Harry, when he heard it, and Meghan, when it was passed on, took offence to it, and therefore that is an issue for them. And also, I think there's slightly wider questions for us as a society. Harry said that he left in part because of racism in the UK.
It was a terrible interview, which really did huge damage to the monarchy, to Britain as a whole, because Meghan talked about the country really being racist, and did huge, huge damage to his relationship with his father and with William. Harry also accused his father of cutting him off financially, which we now know actually wasn't true. We now know several things that were said in that interview were not true.
Sir, have you spoken to your brother since the interview?
No, I haven't spoken yet, but I will do.
And can you just let me know, is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
After the death of their grandfather, Prince Philip, Harry attended the funeral on the 17th of April 2021, with his brother and other royal family members following the coffin.
I think certainly it would have been a conscious decision of Prince William and Prince Harry to do that at the end of the service. You know, the whole family, apart from the Queen, sort of walked back to the castle from the chapel. You know, the fact that Harry walked with William and Kate, I think, was perhaps a symbol that there is at least a willingness to talk and perhaps to have some rapprochement between the two princes. I think as far as the Queen and the late Duke of Edinburgh are concerned, I think that they never really fell out with their grandson in the same way as perhaps he has done with his brother and to some extent his father. So I think that the Queen very much would want there to be, you know, a sort of reuniting. There's still going to have to be discussions going forward. I mean, there's an internal inquiry going on into some of the allegations that were made in that interview. And so I think there will be difficult conversations ahead. But I think that, yes, I think that from the Queen's point of view, she would want to smooth things over, really.
In September 2021, the two brothers unveiled a statue of their mother, Diana, in the sunken garden of Kensington Palace.
All smiles, they would have known the world was watching, but this felt like a genuine reunion. Two sons who have had their troubles coming together with Princess Diana's brother and sisters to remember their mother. Sharing a joke and the duty of unveiling the statue, a lasting tribute how Diana used her spotlight to shine a light on others.
Paul, the princess was a very public figure, and in many respects an icon, but she was somebody's mother. So I paid the greatest heed to both princes and what they had to say.
I think it'll take quite a lot of work for the relationship to be restored to what it was. But I think that, you know, baby steps. And the fact that they were together, the fact that they were smiling together, laughing even at times, clearly talking, is a real step forward.
Yes, it is difficult to know if this was a show of unity just for one day, but it did feel like engagements from a couple of years ago when they were on much better terms, again bouncing off each other today in a way that only brothers can.
On Friday, the 3rd of June, Harry and Meghan attended a low-key Queen's Thanksgiving service. Appearing at the Queen's 70th Platinum Jubilee event could symbolize Harry's desire to reunite with his royal family and brother, Prince William. Prince Harry's book is scheduled to be published in late 2022. It will detail his childhood, his time in the military, his marriage to Meghan Markle, and his family matters. The book won't serve as a bombshell piece, but it will still be an interesting look inside the royal's life.
The two are very different characters, but they complement one another very well. And they've always had a great banter. They tease each other mercilessly.
Royal expert Katie Nicholl shared that Harry and William's relationship are far from close at the moment. But the Duke of Sussex reportedly hopes to sort things out with his older brother. He's floated the idea of getting a mediator to help patch things up with Prince William.
Part of this role and part of this job and this family being under the pressure that it's under, inevitably, stuff happens. But look, we're brothers. We'll always be brothers. We're certainly on different paths at the moment, but I will always be there for him, and as I know, he'll always be there for me.
They did rely on one another.
Prince William, for all his understanding of the seriousness of his role in the future, you get the feeling that he makes it very clear that he needs his brother and he values that.
The future of the two brothers is destined to be complex. The future King of England, who is ready to serve his country with all his might as royalty. A former prince is bursting the royal bubble and blazing his own trail. They were born princes, but with entirely different goals. An unbreakable bond that binds them together profoundly.